Welcome to the Royal Griot, your home for the most powerful stories from the heart of Africa. We are so grateful for your incredible support. You are the reason we tell these tales of heart, soul, and destiny. Before we begin this journey, please drop a comment below and let us know which part of the world you are watching from. Whether you are in New York, London, Kingston, or Accra, we love our global family. Now let us begin. I turned away from the window, my face a mask of cold indifference. I was used to people begging, used to the struggling masses looking for a way into my fortune. I had become cold-hearted over the years. You don't become a millionaire 10 times over by being soft. Efua, what is the meaning of this noise? I stepped out into the corridor. The woman standing before Efua was dressed in a faded but impeccably clean Kent print dress. Her head was bowed, her shoulders shaking. She looked like a woman who had been betrayed by life itself. Beside her stood a small boy, no older than 5, clutching her skirt with wide, frightened eyes. A single mom. My heart should have felt something, but I had buried my emotions long ago in the boardroom. "Sir, I am so sorry," Efua said, her face flushed with anger. "This woman, Amma, was sent by the cleaning agency. But look at her. She tried to hide it under a long sleeve, but when she reached for the mop, I saw it. It's hideous. We can't have someone like this in the executive suite." The woman, Amma, finally looked up. Her eyes were beautiful, deep, dark pools of resilience, but they were filled with tears of shame. She tried to pull her right hand behind her back, but it was too late. "Please," Amma whispered, her voice trembling like a leaf in a storm. "I need this job. My son, he hasn't had a proper meal in 2 days. I am a hard worker. I can scrub floors until they shine. My hand, it doesn't affect my strength. It affects our image." Efua snapped. "This is a mansion of business, not a hospital for the deformed. Move along before I call security to throw you out onto the hot pavement of Independence Avenue." I walked closer, my expensive Italian shoes clicking rhythmically against the polished floor. I wanted to end this. I wanted her gone so I could return to my private jet schedule. I reached out, my intention to signal security, but as I moved, I caught a full glimpse of the limb she was trying to hide. She wasn't just scarred. From her wrist down to the tips of her fingers, the skin was a map of twisted, silvered tissue, the unmistakable mark of a severe, old burn. The world around me suddenly went silent. The hum of the air conditioner, the distant honking of trot roasts in the street, Efua's petty grumbling, it all vanished. My breath hitched in my chest. I felt a sharp, piercing pain in my memory, a flash of fire, the smell of smoke, and the screams of a child trapped in a collapsing wooden kiosk 25 years ago in the slums of Nima. "Wait," I choked out. My voice, usually booming and authoritative, was now a thin whisper. "Sir?" Efua looked confused. "Don't worry, I'm calling the guards now." "Shut up, Efua," I roared, the sudden explosion of my voice making the little boy jump. I stepped toward Amma. She flinched, expecting a blow or a harsher insult. Instead, I reached out. My hands, which signed billion-dollar contracts, were shaking. I gently took her right wrist. She tried to pull away, a sob breaking from her throat. "Please don't mock me," she cried. "I know it is ugly. I know I am a monster to look at." "Ugly?" I whispered. I looked at the pattern of the scar. There was a specific shape near the thumb, a small, unburned patch of skin shaped like a crescent moon. My knees felt like they were made of water. The millionaire who never bowed to anyone, the man who owned half the skyline of Accra, felt the floor rushing up to meet him. To the absolute horror of Efua and the sheer shock of the staff watching from the desks, I sank to my knees right there on the hard marble. I pressed her scarred hand to my forehead, and for the first time in 2 decades, the Iron King began to weep. "It's you," I sobbed, the tears staining the sleeves of my $3,000 suit. "I have searched every corner of this continent. I have spent millions on private investigators, praying for a miracle. I thought the fire had taken you. I thought the girl who saved my life was ashes." Amma froze, her breath hitching. The little boy looked at me in wonder, reaching out a tiny hand to touch my hair. "Kofi?" she whispered, the name a ghost from a past she had tried to bury. "The little boy from the kiosk?" I looked up at her, my face wet, my heart finally breaking open. "You gave me your future to give me a life. You ran back into the flames for a boy you didn't even know." I turned to Efua, who stood frozen like a pillar of salt. "Get out. You're fired. And tell the legal team to prepare a transfer of shares. The woman you just called a monster is the reason this empire exists." But as I reached out to pull Amma into a hug, she stepped back, her face suddenly hardening with a different kind of pain. It's too late for tears, Kofi Mensah, she said, her voice cold as ice. Where were you when I was sleeping under the bridge? Where were you when they kicked me out of the hospital because I couldn't pay for the bandages? You have a fortune and I have a life of abandoned dreams. Being a hero didn't feed my son. It only gave me this. She held up her hand. She turned to walk away, leaving me kneeling in the middle of my own lobby, surrounded by the ghosts of the life I had built on her sacrifice. Amma, wait. I cried out. But she didn't stop. She walked toward the elevators, but just as the doors were about to close, a man in a dark suit, someone I didn't recognize, stepped out and blocked her path, whispering something into her ear that made her face turn deathly pale. The elevator doors were inches from closing when the man in the charcoal suit stepped in, his hand blocking the sensor with a thud. He wasn't one of my employees. He was tall, with a jagged scar running down his jawline and eyes that looked like they had seen too many dark alleys in Bucum. Amma? He hissed, his voice like gravel. The boss is tired of waiting. You thought you could hide in a skyscraper? You owe for the room and you owe for the protection. Give me the boy or come with me now. My blood turned to molten lead. I was off the floor in a second, my grief replaced by a protective rage I hadn't felt in decades. I am Kofi Mensah. I have broken unions and crushed competitors in the boardroom, but seeing this bottom feeder lay a hand on the woman who saved my soul triggered something primal. Get your hands off her, I growled, stepping between them. The man looked me up and down, unimpressed by my tailored suit. This is street business, big man. Go back to your gold and your gadgets. This woman owes people who don't care about your fortune. Amma was trembling, pulling her son, Kwame, behind her. The boy was silent, his little fingers digging into her dress. Please, Kwesi, she pleaded. I told you I would have the money by Friday. I was here for a job interview. You failed the interview, Kwesi sneered, glancing at Efua, who was still hovering nearby like a vulture. And now you're out of time. I didn't wait for him to finish. I signaled to my head of security, Boateng, who was already sprinting across the lobby. Within seconds, Kwesi was pinned against the marble pillar, his arms twisted behind his back. Call the police, Efua stammered, trying to regain her standing. He's a thug. No, I said, my eyes locked on Amma. Boateng, take him to the holding room. I'll deal with him later. Right now, I have a debt of my own to pay. I turned to Amma, but she wasn't looking at me with gratitude. She was looking at me with terror. She saw my power, my security, my wealth, and to her, I was just another man who could control her life with a snap of his fingers. Amma, please, I said, softening my voice. Come into my office. Let's talk. You are safe here. I swear on the life you gave me in Nima. She hesitated, looking at the exit and then at her son. The boy looked hungry. His eyes were fixed on a tray of catering sandwiches on a nearby desk. The struggling reality of her life was laid bare in that look. Only for the boy, she whispered. He needs to sit down. I led them into my private sanctum, a room filled with African mahogany, original paintings from the best artists in Lagos and Accra, and a view that cost more than 1,000 houses in the slums. I watched her look around and for a moment I felt a sense of shame. I had all of this while the girl who pulled me from the burning kiosk had been treated like trash by the very world I helped build. I buzzled my secretary. Bring the finest jollof rice, grilled tilapia and fresh juice. Now. And cancel my meeting with the Dubai investors. Sir? The Dubai deal is worth 40 million. Cancel it. I roared. We sat in the plush leather chairs. Kwame began to eat ravenously the moment the food arrived. Amma sat on the edge of her seat, her scarred hand tucked under her left arm, hiding it from my sight. Stop hiding it, I said gently. That scar is the most beautiful thing in this room, Amma. It is the signature of a hero. It is the reason I am a pariah, she countered, her voice bitter. When I saved you I was 12. You were 7. My mother died a year later because we had no money for her medicine. I became a single mom to my younger siblings and then later to Kwame. Every job I applied for, they looked at my hand and thought I was cursed. They thought I was a thief or a witch. This scar didn't make me a hero, Kofi. It made me a ghost. The weight of her words hit me harder than any financial loss. I had been living a life of luxury, flying in a private jet, while my secret admirer, the girl I had dreamed of finding, was being called a monster in the streets of Accra. I tried to find you, I said, my voice thick with emotion. After the hospital, they moved me to an orphanage in Kumasi. By the time I was old enough to look for you, the old neighborhood was gone. They demolished the kiosks to build the highway. I know, she said. I watched them do it. I stood there with my hand in bandages while the bulldozers crushed what was left of my life. I heard your name over the years. Kofi Mensah, the billionaire. I saw your face on billboards. I even came here once, 3 years ago, but the security wouldn't let me pass the gate. They said I looked like a beggar. I felt like a cold-hearted fool. I had built walls so high that the only person who mattered couldn't climb over them. I am going to make it right, I vowed. I am moving you and Kwame into my mansion in Trosaco Valley. Tonight. You will have the best doctors for your hand, the best schools for the boy. My empire is your empire. Amma stood up abruptly, nearly knocking over her water. No. I don't want your charity, Kofi. I wanted a job. I wanted dignity. I'm not a pet you can buy to soothe your conscience. You think a big house erases 25 years of hunger? You think a limousine can drive over the graves of the people I lost while you were getting rich? It's not charity, Amma. It's justice. It's too late for justice, she snapped. She grabbed Kwame's hand. We are leaving. Thank you for the rice. She turned to the door, but it flew open before she could reach it. My younger brother, Teta, burst in. He was the CFO of the company, a man driven by greed and a pathological fear of losing our fortune. Kofi, have you lost your mind? Teta shouted, waving a tablet in the air. The news is already out. The Iron King on his knees for a beggar. The stock is dipping. And who is this woman? Efua says you're trying to hand over shares. He looked at Amma with pure disgust. You. I know your type. You found out who he was and came here with a sob story about a fire. You're a professional scammer, aren't you? Teta, watch your tongue. I warned, stepping forward. No, Kofi. You're being soft-hearted and weak. This woman is a threat to the Mensah legacy. Teta turned to Amma, his face contorted. How much do you want? 10,000 Sadies? 20? Take it and disappear, or I'll make sure the police find those debts Kwesi was talking about. I'll have you in Sawam prison by sunset, and your brat in a state home. Amma didn't flinch. She looked Teta in the eye with a coldness that matched my own. Keep your money. I've lived with nothing, so you can't threaten me with it. She looked at me one last time. See, Kofi? This is your world. It's full of fire just like that kiosk. Only this time, I'm not staying to get burned. She pushed past Teta and ran out. I started to follow, but Teta grabbed my arm. Let her go, Kofi. Think about the board. Think about the family. She is my family. I screamed, shoving him back. I ran to the balcony, looking down at the street. I saw her small figure emerging from the tower, clutching Kwame's hand. They stepped into the busy Accra traffic, trying to disappear into the crowd of street hawkers and cars. But then I saw it. A black SUV with tinted windows, the same one Kwesi had arrived in, pulled up alongside her. The back door slid open. Before I could even scream her name, 2 men jumped out, grabbed Kwame and threw him into the vehicle. Amma fought like a lioness, screaming and clawing, but they slammed her to the ground and sped off, leaving her lying in the middle of the road as the rain began to pour down on the red dust of Accra. My heart stopped. My miracle was being stolen again. I didn't wait for the elevator. I took the stairs 3 at a time, my lungs burning, the expensive fabric of my suit jacket tightening around my shoulders. Every step was a heartbeat thumping in my ears. I burst through the heavy glass doors of the lobby and into the humid, chaotic air of Independence Avenue. The rain was coming down in thick, heavy sheets now, the kind of Accra rain that turns the dust into red rivers and makes the world go gray. Through the blur of moving cars and the frantic calls of street hawkers, I saw her. Amma was on her knees in the middle of the asphalt, her clothes soaked through, her hair matted to her face. She was screaming, a raw, guttural sound that was swallowed by the thunder. Kwame. Kwame. I ignored the screeching tires of a trotro that nearly clipped me. I dove into the traffic, my arms reaching for her. When I grabbed her shoulders, she fought me. She turned around and struck my chest with her fists, including that scarred, beautiful hand, her eyes wild with a mother's agony. They took him. Kofi, they took my baby, she shrieked, her voice breaking. This is because of you. Because of your money. Because of your empire. I held her tight, letting her rain blows upon me. I deserved every one of them. I had spent years building a fortune, thinking it made me a god, but I couldn't even protect a 5-year-old boy on my own doorstep. I looked up at the gray sky, the rain washing away the arrogance I had worn like armor for 2 decades. I will get him back, Amma. I swear on my life I will get him back, I whispered into her hair. I picked her up, she was so light, so fragile from years of struggling, and carried her toward my waiting limousine. My driver, Mensah, had already pulled up, his face grim. He knew what had happened. In the distance, I saw Teta standing at the top of the office steps, his arms crossed, watching us with a cold, calculated expression. My own brother. My blood. And in that moment, I knew. Kwesi hadn't just appeared out of thin air. Someone had tipped him off. Someone wanted Amma gone. As the car door closed, the silence of the luxury interior felt like a tomb. Amma collapsed against the leather seats, sobbing into her hands. I grabbed my phone and dialed a number I hadn't called in years. I didn't call the police, not yet. In Accra, if you want something found fast, you call the men who own the shadows. I need every street camera from East Legon to the harbor, I barked into the phone. A black SUV. No plates. They took a boy. Find it, or I will burn every contract your family has with my firm. I turned to Amma. She was staring at her scarred hand, the silvered skin gleaming in the dim light of the car. He was all I had, Kofi, she said, her voice hollow. I worked 3 jobs. I cleaned toilets, I sold iced water in the sun, I did everything so he would never have to know what it felt like to be abandoned. And now, because I came here looking for a second chance, I've lost him. You haven't lost him, I said, reaching out to touch her hand. She didn't pull away this time. We're going to my home. You need to dry off. You need to eat. I don't want your mansion, she snapped, a flash of her old fire returning. I want my son. The mansion is the safest place for you, I said firmly. And it's where my security team is setting up the command center. If we stay on the streets, we are targets. Please, Amma. Trust me. She looked at me, searching my face for the boy I used to be. For a moment, the millionaire mask slipped, and she saw the terrified 7-year-old she had pulled from the fire. She gave a small, jerky nod. We arrived at my estate in Trosaco Valley. The gates swung open, and we drove past the manicured lawns and the fountains that cost more than a village's yearly budget. To Amma, this wasn't a home, it was a cage of gold. I led her inside, barking orders at my staff to bring warm blankets and tea. I took her to the library, a room filled with history and quiet. I left her there for a moment to check with Boateng, my head of security. Sir, Boateng said, stepping into the hallway. We tracked the SUV. It headed toward the Jamestown area. But there's something else. We pulled the phone records for your brother's office line. My heart went cold. And? He made a call 10 minutes before the woman arrived. To a number linked to a local gang leader. The message was simple. The problem is coming to the tower. Handle it. The walls of my mansion suddenly felt like they were closing in. My own brother had put a target on a single mom and a child just to protect a profit margin. He thought I was soft-hearted because I had knelt for her. He didn't realize that kneeling was the first time I had been truly strong in years. I walked back into the library. Amma was standing by the fireplace, looking at a photo of me and Teta from our graduation. You have a beautiful life, Kofi, she said quietly. But it's built on a foundation of ice. Your brother, he hates me. He looks at me and sees a stain on your reputation. My brother is a fool, I said, walking toward her. He thinks wealth is about what you keep. I've realized today that wealth is about what you are willing to lose for the people you love. Do you love me, Kofi? She asked, turning to face me. The question was direct, devoid of the games people usually played with me. Or do you just love the memory of the girl who saved you? I stepped into her space, the scent of the rain still clinging to her skin. I've spent 25 years looking for the girl. But today I met the woman. I saw your strength. I saw your sacrifice. I saw the way you fought for your son. Amma, I didn't just fall to my knees because of the scar. I fell to my knees because I realized my heart had finally found its way home. For a fleeting second, the tension between us softened. I saw a glimmer of hope, a spark of a new beginning. But then my phone vibrated on the mahogany table. It was an unknown number. I picked it up and put it on speaker. Mensah, a voice rasped. It was Kwesi. Your brother says you're making a scene. He says you're acting like a man who has forgotten how to lead an empire. We have the boy. He's crying for his mama. It's annoying. Amma let out a choked sob, her hand flying to her mouth. I gripped the edge of the table so hard my knuckles turned white. If you touch a hair on his head, I said, my voice low and dangerous, there is no corner of this earth where I won't find you. What do you want? I want what Teta promised, Kwesi laughed. But since you're the big boss, I want double. 50 million sadies. Gosh. No police. If I see a blue light, the boy goes into the lagoon. You'll have it, I said instantly. Where? The old timber market. Midnight. Come alone, Kofi. No security. Just you and the money. Let's see if the Iron King is as brave as the little girl who saved him. The line went dead. Amma grabbed my arm, her fingers digging into my suit. You can't go alone. It's a trap. Teta is behind this. He wants you gone so he can take the empire. I know, I said, looking her in the eyes. That's exactly why I have to go. I owe you a life, Amma. And tonight I'm going to pay that debt no matter what it costs me. I turned to Boateng, who was standing in the doorway. Prepare the car. And Boateng, call the board of directors. Tell them there is going to be a change in leadership by morning. As I walked toward the door, Amma caught my hand, the scarred one. She pulled it to her cheek, her tears warm against my palm. Come back to us, Kofi. Don't let the fire win this time. I left the mansion, the weight of my destiny heavy on my shoulders. I was walking into a lion's den, orchestrated by my own flesh and blood. But as I sat in the back of the car watching the lights of Accra flicker by, I didn't feel like a millionaire. I felt like a man who had finally found something worth more than gold. The drive to the old timber market in Jamestown felt like a descent into the belly of a beast I had spent my whole life trying to escape. I sat in the back of the limousine, the heavy duffel bags of cash at my feet, a small fraction of my fortune, yet tonight, it felt like the weight of the world. Welcome back to the Royal Griot. We are witnessing a man's destiny collide with his past. If you're enjoying this journey of resilience and justice, please take a moment to subscribe and let us know in the comments. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you shared blood with? Your stories inspire us. Now, Chapter 4. Chapter 4. Stop the car, I commanded as we reached the edge of the market. The rain had slowed to a persistent, ghostly drizzle. The air here was thick with the scent of salt water from the nearby Gulf of Guinea and the sharp, earthy smell of damp wood. This was the Accra they don't show in the travel brochures. A place of shadows, narrow alleys, and secrets. Sir, let me go with you, Boateng pleaded, his hand hovering over his sidearm. It's a setup. I can feel it in my bones. If they see a second shadow, the boy dies, I said, my voice sounding steadier than I felt. Stay 3 blocks back. If I don't signal you in 15 minutes, level the place. I stepped out of the car, the cool night air hitting my face. I looked back at the mansion I had left behind, thinking of Amma waiting there. I had left her with a promise, but as I gripped the handles of the money bags, I wondered if I was walking toward my own end. I had spent years in the boardroom outmaneuvering lions, but those lions wore silk ties. The men waiting for me in the timber market wore the desperation of the streets. I walked into the maze of stacked planks and rusting corrugated iron. My expensive shoes splashed through puddles of oily water. I'm here, I shouted, my voice echoing off the stacks of mahogany and cedar. I have the money. Bring me the boy. From the darkness of a hollowed-out warehouse, a figure emerged. It wasn't Kwesi. It was a silhouette I knew all too well. The gait, the tilt of the head, the way he adjusted his cuffs even in a junkyard. Teta, I whispered, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. My brother stepped into the dim light of a flickering street lamp. He wasn't wearing his designer suit anymore. He wore a dark leather jacket, looking more like a common criminal than the CFO of a global empire. You always were the dramatic one, Kofi, Teta said, a mocking smile playing on his lips. The Iron King coming to save the day. Just poetic, really. The great philanthropist falling for a girl with a ruined hand and a bastard child. Where is Kwame? I demanded, dropping the bags. You've had your fun, Teta. This ends now. I'll give you the money. I'll even give you a head start before the police come for you. Just give me the boy. Teta laughed, a dry, hollow sound that chilled me to the bone. You think this is about money? I have millions, Kofi. You made sure of that. This is about the fortune you were going to hand over to a stranger. I've spent my life in your shadow, cleaning up your messes, keeping the board happy while you played the visionary. I won't let you throw it all away for a memory. She's not a memory. She's the reason we have anything. I roared. If she hadn't pulled me out of that fire, you would have been an only child living in a shack in Nima. You owe her your life as much as I do. I owe her nothing. Teta snapped, his face contorting with a sudden visceral rage. She's a ghost from a past we were supposed to forget. We are the Mensahs. We don't belong to the dirt anymore. But you wanted to bring the dirt into our home. He whistled, and Kwesi emerged from behind a stack of timber, holding Kwame by the scruff of his shirt. The boy's face was swollen from crying, his small frame trembling so hard I could hear his teeth chattering. Mama? Kwame whimpered when he saw me. Uncle, where is Mama? She's waiting for you, brave boy, I said, my heart breaking. I'm going to take you to her. No, you're not, Teta said. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small silver pistol. Kwesi was supposed to handle this quietly. A simple kidnapping, a frightened woman runs away and you go back to being the king. But you had to make it personal. You had to bring her to the house. You had to talk about shares. Teta, put the gun down, I said, stepping forward. You're not a killer. You're a businessman. In this city, Kofi, there isn't much difference, he replied. He pointed the gun at the bags of money. Kwesi, take the cash and go. The boy stays here with me. Kwesi hesitated. He was a thug, but he wasn't a fool. The deal was the money, Teta. I didn't sign up for a family execution. Take the money and leave. Teta screamed. As Kwesi reached for the bags, I saw my opening. I didn't go for Teta. I lunged for Kwesi, tackling him into the mud. We rolled, a tangle of limbs and desperation. I felt a sharp pain in my side as Kwesi's knife grazed me, but I didn't let go. I had to create a distraction. Run, Kwame. Run to the car. I yelled. The boy, fueled by pure terror, twisted out of Kwesi's grip and bolted toward the entrance of the market. Stop him. Teta shouted, swinging the gun toward the small, retreating figure of the child. No. I screamed. I scrambled up from the mud, ignoring the stinging in my side, and threw myself in front of Teta just as the flash of the muzzle lit up the dark warehouse. The sound was deafening. I felt a white-hot searing pain in my shoulder, the force of the bullet spinning me around. I hit the ground hard, the taste of copper filling my mouth. The world began to tilt, the rain turning into a blur of gray and red. Teta stood over me, the gun smoking in his hand. He looked horrified, his bravado crumbling as he realized what he had actually done. He hadn't just shot a rival, he had shot his brother. Kofi. He gasped, his voice trembling. I just wanted you to listen. You were always a bad aim, I wheezed, a weak smile touching my lips as I saw Kwame disappear into the shadows where I knew Boateng would be waiting. But then the sound of sirens began to wail in the distance, not the police but something else. And from the entrance of the warehouse, a figure appeared, walking through the rain like an avenging angel. It was Amma. She hadn't stayed at the mansion. She had followed us. In her hand she wasn't holding a gun or a knife. She was holding a heavy rusted iron bar she had picked up from the yard. Her face was a mask of such terrifying maternal fury that even Kwesi backed away. She looked at me bleeding on the ground, then she looked at Teta. You think you are powerful because you have a gun? She whispered, her voice carrying over the wind. You are nothing but a coward who hides behind his brother's shadow. She stepped toward him, her scarred hand gripped tight around the iron. Teta raised the gun, his hand shaking violently. Stay back. I'll kill you too. You're the reason this is happening. Then do it, Amma said, her voice steady. But know this, even if you kill me you've already lost. Look at your brother. Look at the man who loved you. You've killed the only person who ever truly cared about you. Teta looked down at me and in his eyes, I saw the final collapse of his soul. He dropped the gun into the mud and fell to his knees, burying his face in his hands. Amma dropped the iron bar and rushed to my side. She pulled my head into her lap, her scarred hand pressing against the wound in my shoulder to stop the bleeding. Stay with me, Kofi, she sobbed. Don't you dare leave me again. We were supposed to have a new beginning. The boy. I managed to say. Is he? He's safe. Boateng has him, she whispered. I looked up at her, the woman who had saved me twice, once from the fire of a kiosk and once from the fire of my own greed and coldness. I reached up and touched the silvered skin of her hand. Amma? I whispered. I'm so sorry it took so long to find you. My eyes began to close, the sound of the rain fading into a gentle hum. But just as the darkness started to take me, I heard a voice, cold, calculated, and coming from the shadows behind Amma. Well, a very touching scene. But I believe there's still the matter of the company's missing $40 million from the Dubai deal, Kofi. And since you're in no state to sign documents, I forced my eyes open. Standing there, shadowed by the timber stacks, was the one person I had never suspected, the person who truly stood to gain from the fall of the Mensah brothers. The shadows near the stacks of mahogany shifted, and out stepped Efua. But she wasn't the trembling assistant I had fired hours ago. She was wearing a trench coat, a sleek 9mm pistol in her hand, and a smile that was colder than the rain. Behind her stood two men I recognized, the internal auditors who had been handling the Dubai infrastructure fortune. Efua? I gasped, the pain in my shoulder pulsing with every heartbeat. Oh, Kofi. You always were so focused on the big picture, that you missed the termites eating your foundation, she sneered, stepping over the mud to stand over me and Amma. You thought I was just a secretary? I've been rerouting funds from the boardroom for 3 years. $40 million, tucked away in offshore accounts. I just needed a distraction to finish the transfer. And then, like a gift from destiny, this woman appeared with her burnt hand and her old stories. Amma looked up at her, her eyes narrowed. You were the one who told the street gangs where I lived. You were the one who told Teta I was a scammer. I knew Teta was weak and greedy, Efua laughed, glancing at my brother, who was still sobbing on his knees. I knew if I whispered the right lies he would do the dirty work for me. I didn't expect him to actually shoot you, Kofi. That was a bonus. Now, I have the signatures I need on these digital tablets and you, well, you're just a tragic headline. The Iron King and his brother, killed in a botched robbery in the slums. It's perfect. Welcome back to the final chapter of our journey on the Royal Griot. This is the moment where the darkness meets the light. Before we reveal the end of this powerful tale, please subscribe and tell us, do you believe that those who plot against the innocent eventually fall into their own traps? The cold metal of Efua's gun was inches from my head. I looked at Amma. She wasn't looking at the gun. She was looking at me, her scarred hand still pressing firmly against my wound, her blood and mine mixing in the red dust of the timber market. In that moment, I wasn't thinking about my empire or my private jet. I was thinking about the girl in the fire. I had spent my life building walls of gold, but she was the only one who had ever truly walked through the flames for me. Do it then, Efua, I whispered, my voice thick. But you've already lost. You can take the money, but you'll never have the power this woman has. She has a heart that fire couldn't burn. You're already ashes inside. Efua's face contorted with rage. Goodbye, Kofi. Her finger tightened on the trigger. But the shot never came. Suddenly, the warehouse was flooded with blinding white light. A megaphone boomed, "Police! Drop the weapon!" Boateng burst through the timber stacks, followed by a dozen armed officers. But he wasn't alone. Walking beside him, his face grim, was the commissioner of police. Efua spun around, but she was surrounded. She looked at the tablet in her hand, then at the auditors who were already putting their hands up. It's over, Efua, Boateng said, his voice like iron. We didn't just track the SUV. We've been tracking your IP address for months. We just needed you to lead us to your accomplices. The Iron King might have been blinded by his heart, but his security team was never asleep. Teta looked up, his eyes red. He saw the police, saw the end of his life as he knew it. He crawled toward me, his hands shaking. Kofi, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I looked at my brother. I felt a surge of anger, but then I looked at Amma. I saw the way she looked at her son, Kwame, who was now being carried toward us by a gentle officer. She didn't have room for hate. She only had room for healing. Teta, I said, the words heavy. You betrayed our blood. You will face the law. But, you are still my brother. I won't let you rot in a hole. But you will never touch a cent of the Mensah fortune again. You will work to repay every life you tried to ruin. Efua was led away in handcuffs, screaming about her rights, but her voice was drowned out by the sound of an ambulance siren. As they lifted me onto the stretcher, Amma wouldn't let go of my hand. The paramedics tried to move her, but I gripped her fingers, the scarred ones, and held on. Don't leave, I whispered. I'm not going anywhere, Kofi, she said, her voice a soothing balm. I've waited 25 years for this. I can wait a little longer for you to wake up. 6 months later. The sun was setting over the Atlantic Ocean, casting a golden glow over the gardens of my mansion in Trasacco. The air was filled with the scent of jasmine and the sound of high-life music playing softly from the speakers hidden in the palm trees. I stood on the balcony, my shoulders still stiff from the wound, but my heart lighter than it had been in decades. Below me, I saw Kwame running across the lawn, chasing a high-end drone I had bought him for his birthday. He was no longer the frightened, hungry boy from the tower. He was a prince in his own right, his laughter echoing through the halls of my empire. I turned as the glass doors slid open. Amma walked out, wearing a stunning gown of white and gold silk. She didn't wear long sleeves anymore. Her right hand, the one with the crescent moon scar, was adorned with a simple, elegant diamond ring. She had undergone several surgeries not to hide the scar, but to restore the full movement of her fingers. The best doctors in the world, paid for by the millionaire she saved, had called her recovery a miracle. But Amma knew better. It was destiny. The guests are waiting, Kofi, she said, a playful smile on her lips. Let them wait, I said, pulling her into my arms. I spent too many years rushing into the boardroom. Now, I only want to rush to you. Teta called today, she whispered, her head resting on my chest. He's doing well at the rehabilitation farm. He said he's finally learning the value of a day's work. Good, I said. Forgiveness is a long road, but we're walking it. We walked down the grand staircase together, hand in hand. The boardroom was now run by a new committee, one that focused on social housing and fire safety in the slums of Nema and Jamestown. We had turned the Mensah fortune into a force for unity and new beginnings. As we stepped onto the dais, I looked out at the crowd, friends, family, and even some of the street hawkers who had helped Amma during her years of struggling. I raised my glass. Today we don't celebrate wealth, I told them, my voice booming with a new kind of authority, one born of soft-hearted wisdom. We celebrate the scars we carry. Because it is our scars that show where we have been, and our love that shows where we are going. To Amma, my secret admirer, my hero, and the queen of this home. The crowd erupted in cheers. I leaned down and kissed my wife, the woman who had been rejected by the world but chosen by my heart. Love wins. It always wins when you are brave enough to walk through the fire for it. As the fireworks lit up the Accra sky, I knew that my life had finally begun. I was no longer the Iron King. I was a man who had found his soul in the palm of a scarred hand. Life lesson. True wealth is not measured by the balance in your bank account, but by the lives you are willing to save and the people who would do the same for you. Never judge a person by their outward appearance or their past struggles. The greatest treasures are often found behind the most painful scars. Resilience is the fire that refines the soul into gold. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more gripping stories like this from the Royal Griot. What do you think of Kofi and Amma's journey? Did Teta deserve forgiveness? Comment below and let us know your thoughts. We love reading your insights. Until next time, stay blessed.